Yes. Oh my God. Oh my God. Well, it was nice catching up with you guys anyway. How late are we?
Oh my God, we have been doing the live show for like 5 minutes, realizing it wasn't on.
5 minutes is fine.
That's because I gave control of the whole thing to Artie, so I'm sorry about that.
Yeah,
it was my mistake. I do apologize. Let's go back to the start. You guys can pretend you haven't heard all this, but I'm in Glasgow.
Okay, where are you, Graham?
I'm in Glasgow. I was here for Marion's thing yesterday. It was very well attended. About 250 people, I'm told. You know, a lot of us couldn't sleep the night beforehand. So I was one of them. I just couldn't get to sleep the night beforehand. So, oh man, I was exhausted. We were standing up for about 2 hours straight. And then I went for a glass of wine afterwards, and it hit me like a kosh, you know. So I'm still a little bit dazed from all that. But it was a really nice, it was a really lovely day. Apart from them not throwing it out, which I'm kind of surprised. I'm still surprised they haven't thrown it out yet. It's such a ridiculous case. And there were loads of wonderful people there. I met the woman who did the piece for me about the Rosie Project Rape Crisis Center, who she told me in a recent blog that she couldn't, or a recent post on my site, that she couldn't use their services because she doesn't know if she asked for a woman counselor whether she'd be called a bigot and whether the police would be called on her. So I met her. I met a bunch of brilliant, like Sister Flo, who set up, like, I think something like 14 gender critical groups around the country. It may be even more, maybe way under. I may be way under. So I met, I didn't meet her yesterday, but she was there, and a lot of the Scottish witches. And I finally met Belle Staffy, who's that brilliant woman you see, butch lesbian at the front of all these protests with a loudspeaker. So it was lovely to meet her and her friends. So yeah, it was a really. I'm
glad you went up to support Marion. I think it means a lot, and I think it means a lot that all of these people were out there supporting her. I think, I applaud everyone, because honestly, even standing there now, your potential to be subject to abuse. So fair play to everyone, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to go in here just so I'm closer to the Wi-Fi, but the sound is a bit brighter, so tell me if it's too much. Is it stuttering? Because it's stuttering on my end a little bit.
No, you're all good.
You're in a big room. It's like Twin Peaks over there now.
Yeah. It's just it's one of those nice big Edinburgh flats, you know. Oh yeah, the little guy's going to come out and dance now. Nip, 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 nip. Nip, 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 nip. But two interesting things happened there. The first thing was there were a couple of women. Someone came up to me and said, "Listen, there's two women over there who said they've been in several prisons. They've been moved from prison to prison, or they knew each other from different prisons, or whatever." And they said that there's a couple I think they mentioned Greenock, and a couple of Perth, and one other prison. And they said that there are men basically in the prison. And she said that, like, one woman told me she was in her cell and she heard one of them having sex with a female prisoner in the cell beside them.
Not female prisoner.
Yeah. Her accent was like so strong that I was struggling to understand a lot of it. But she said she definitely mentioned pigtails at one moment. She said,
"Oh yes,
he's wandering around in pigtails," and she said that the showers in these prisons are essentially unisex now. You know?
Yeah, that must be scary, because the women must be going out of their way to avoid using them at the same time and being afraid to use them and dashing in and out as quick as possible. You know? Yeah.
So it was an interesting moment, because that's what Marion has been fighting, and now she could end up in that system. You know, it's really shocking.
It's very shocking, and it's incredibly frightening. What are they thinking? What on earth are they thinking of?
Also, why isn't it being covered? Why isn't the Scottish press covering it? You know, it's really shocking. And
they can't prosecute rape properly, but they can prosecute women talking.
Yeah. It's just amazing. And I know that they've brought in a new charge against Marion for sharing publicly available information about the person who arrested her. The person who arrested her was on. Now I just know this. She hasn't said this to me. I want to make that clear. Marion hasn't said anything to me about the case beyond the stuff I already know.
Well, this was on Twitter. I saw this on Twitter.
Yeah. And so this person put a big thing on their police page saying, "Oh, I'm LGBTQ plus TUVIX," which is a political statement because, you know, if you accept all that stuff, it means that you accept all the stuff that goes along with it. That some men with penises are women, etc., etc.
Yeah, so it's an identity label. Homosexuality is not. Sexual orientation is baked in. LGBTQ plus XYZ LMNOP is an identity label and a political identity label. Yeah, exactly. So she made her ideological position clear, and Marion, I think, shared that. You know, so you know, it's a sign of desperation, I think, that they're adding this one to it, because when the tweets finally do get out, I think the people responsible for bringing these charges are going to be shown as the ridiculous, contemptible misogynists that they are.
Well, I hope so. I do hope so, because some of the things that have been said by some of these people are in themselves contemptible and unpleasant. It's astounding to me that people actually have the hubris to bring these charges and say this is a problem, when, you know, you've only got to look at sort of past history and think it doesn't look good from where I'm sitting.
Yeah. And
this police aren't supposed to be doing this. You're not supposed to be using the force of the law to virtue signal. You know, my God, if people complain about police brutality and police overreach, and then they slap a rainbow on the police cars, and suddenly they just want the police to have all the powers in the world to do everything that they want. It's insane. It's just completely insane to me. You know. Also, the police are another organization who are pretending that this matter has been settled, and it hasn't been settled because the debate hasn't happened. And I'm dead serious. I hope someone will pass on to Posey Park. I mean, I'll call her myself at some point, but I'm dead serious in that I really think we should, as a mass protest, cancel our BBC license and say that we're cancelling it and say the reasons for it. Because one of the major problems in this country is that the BBC is abdicating its responsibilities by refusing to have this debate. While Marion was in court yesterday, Woman's Hour was talking about curries. You know, it didn't have any mention of Marion's case. You know,
that is actually astonishing, isn't it? Because this is a free speech, women's right to talk about their misogyny, women's right to talk, and really very mildly, and share pictures of ribbons. This is, you know, for Women's Hour not to cover this. It's a women's interest story, without a doubt. It's one of the biggest women's interest story in the country this year.
It's one of treating it like it's some kind of like radical extremist thing instead of like central to the rights of women. You know.
Yes. This is one of the biggest women's stories in the last 100 years. You know, they didn't have Maya on because they had a feature on about bubble baths or some shit like that. And you know, like another thing about the BBC license, about refusing to pay the BBC license. I met a woman today. I went into Waterstones to annoy them about the Helen Joyce book. There was one copy downstairs in the gender section, not in the new non-fiction section, where you would expect it to be, since it's a bestseller. It was buried away down 2 floors. So I moaned at them about that. And as I was leaving, a woman recognized me, and she was very nice. And we were talking about the whole thing. And I said, "Are you coming to the Holyrood protest?" And she said, "No." She said, I'm not out yet. I'm too scared, you know. And I really feel for people who are too scared to get into this. But I said, do whatever you can that's safe for you. Just do whatever you can that's safe for you. And we all know what that is. That's things like adding to fundraisers and maybe signing petitions and stuff like that. But one thing I think we could do that will really get us noticed is stop paying the license fee. If there's a mass movement of women to stop paying the license fee, it'll bring attention to a few things. It'll bring attention to the fact that 70% of women conviction. What is it? I can't remember the number. There's a huge amount of women in prison for not paying the license fee. Right, that's one thing. And they're in prison for not paying the license fee for a TV channel that tells kids that a straight couple are lesbians. You know, I mean, that's grooming, and it needs to be stopped. And if the BBC start to realize that, you know, the women who hold the purse strings sometimes in many households aren't going to put up with this shit, you might even see a discussion about it. And that's all we're after. We're just after a discussion, you know? So, that's I think covers
it. Do you know what's interesting? Do you know what's really interesting? And it still astonishes me, the bullying of transactivism is the fact, you know, you say, oh, she said, I'm not out yet. It's literally the vast majority of the UK believe what we believe. And what we believe is that humans can't change sex, you know, dress out however you want. However, small areas of conflict, you know, we should talk about, and we should make sure that women have single-sex spaces, and that we really consider what we're doing around the medicalisation of kids. I mean, that's it. It's not very much, is it? It really isn't. And the vast majority of the UK agree with this. And yet, the bullying tactics with transactivism is such that anyone who says it, they'll get shut down, and their work will be written to, and they'll be abused, doxed, threatened, and then you've got people saying, I'm harmed, like from the other side. It's just astonishing to me. I'm afraid it's there's such a lot of narcissism in it, where it's not an equal fight. It's sort of reasonable people fighting just a massive movement of narcissists.
Absolutely, 100%.
Of incredibly empowered narcissists. They've been empowered by the media, you know, by the silencing of any of our voices, you know.
Yeah, it's a combination of most people thinking this isn't worth the trouble. Like you said, Helen, I think most people agree with our positions. I think that's very obvious. But they're keeping quiet because it's not worth the trouble. They're saying, if I speak up, they're doing a little bit of calculus in their minds, like, does this matter to me enough to lose my job, to be harassed and attacked by a gang of raging narcissists? And then you got people in power, institutions, who are saying, okay, not only is it too costly to speak out against this, but if we join up with it and speak out for it, we get all of these corporate benefits. We you know, we're gay, rainbow washing our organization. We're perceived, at least in the short term, as being progressive. And people are just thinking about the short term because they're just thinking about their tenure. You know, the employees in those positions, that their tenure in those jobs. They're not thinking about the long term of any of this. And politicians, the same thing. This is just a cheap vote grab. So there's just a lot of selfish motivation from people who jump on board, and a lot of people staying silent because they see it's not worth the trouble, because they've made it too expensive. So they made the price too high to say what everybody knows to be true. So then you're left with us. You're left with a small group of people who are grassroots, who are charged about this, women who've been affected by this personally, gays and lesbians, who are really, really angry and charged. But there's another group that's really angry and charged, and that's the very, very young. So we sort of started a few minutes late because we thought we were recording and we had to restart. But Graham mentioned that he had met a BBC journalist when he was in Scotland, a woman who said, you know, I'm seeing a lot of women around here are all very old. There's not young women don't agree with you. A, that's of course not true. B, that's a sexist thing to even try to say. But C, it's not true in that if you look at the demographics, there is a cohort who are very, very young, who are even more put off by cancel culture and woke identity politics than the boomers and the Gen Xers. It's just the sort of it's the sort of millennial age demographic that's moving its way through the ranks, that's been sold on this. So it's not true that it's just older people who are against this. It's the very young as well who are even more against this and are very passionate about it.
Well, you know, another thing about that, right, is that same woman, she was kind of, I could tell she just kind of had you know, the vaguest idea of what was going on, because I pointed over to Seven Hex, who's local to Marion, who'd been given a lift by Marion to the trial, along with Mr. Menno, where she was going to be accused of transphobia and homophobia.
Like she's in a car with a gay man and a trans-identified male being like, "Hey."
But I pointed out Seven Hex to her, and you could tell she was just shocked. She didn't think there was such a thing as a transsexual person, a trans person who didn't agree with all this shite, you know. And you can tell that when she says, "I don't," you know, younger women don't agree with you, she doesn't know what they don't agree with or what they do agree with. She doesn't know the issues. No one knows the issues because one side has successfully demonized the other as simply bigots, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it reminds me a little bit of what happened. Oh, I better not get into that. That'll get me into trouble. But
no,
like,
let me take this up then, because I think, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I saw this a lot on the weekend. There was a thread, I think we touched on it on Saturday, of someone making a thread of gender critical people, a face swap app, you know, just listing them at their face.
Oh yeah, and turning their faces to women and vice versa. Yeah,
and then also weirdly making out that every single one of them was sort of weird and creepy in some way, which I didn't think really was helpful for trans acceptance. I'm not quite sure what they were.
Why would we get this idea that like they had this so much self-hatred that we would be disgusted if we were digitally trans?
Yeah.
Of course, we'd be like, how could we possibly give a shit? You know, I'd be curious to know what I would look like when a computer tried to make me look like a lady.
But it was interesting because somebody drew my attention to it, because I was in there, and it was really shocking to me because I looked at the picture and there was my late brother. There he was, just looking at me. I was really shocked. I was quite tearful because, you know, I wasn't expecting to see him. Now this person obviously didn't know that he'd overdosed like 5 years ago, but the caption was, you know, lifeless eyes. Look, he's lifeless, and that was really, you know, that was really quite upsetting. So anyway, so I'd seen this, so I challenged this thread, and honest to God, the replies, the people have been so abusive, so shockingly abusive. Terrible arguments, not particularly smart, but what really struck me was there were lots of people sort of tag teaming in, but it wasn't about making a point. It wasn't about putting forth an argument and saying, well, this is what I feel that we should have because of these reasons. It was very much the case of, you've been destroyed, you've been humiliated. Oh, look, she's got you, she's won. And I thought, and this language was really ringing a bell with me. And then I realized it's from Pornhub. This is the language of porn. You see it, you know, teen girl destroyed by, you know, like 3 men, and humiliated woman. Oh, Artie's gone. And it occurred to me that it's really not about much more than the humiliation of women. It's they simply want, a huge part of it is simply there to try and humiliate women, and that really does fit in with the idea of, we're coming into your spaces, we're coming in whether you like it or not. And it's not necessarily because they want it for any other reason than to say, we're coming in and you can't stop us. And I was really shocked by how there were so many people, and then also men getting on board with the same thing. You're evil, you're bigoted, you're horrible. It's such an unpleasant movement, and I'm afraid it's made me realise that I'm not sure that there is a compromise to be had. I think it simply needs to be defeated. It's poisonous and it's unpleasant, and there's no middle
ground with it.
It just has to be defeated. It has to be a movement that's consigned to the dustbin of history, and we just need to carry on.
Exactly. And may I say, Helen, that I thought your brother looked lovely. If that did look like your brother, then I thought he looked like a lovely man with lovely kind eyes and very like his sister. So
that's nice.
which is probably not surprising considering it was you.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I was talking to a journalist this week about it, and he said, "What's the end game? When do you finish this?" And I said, "When it's been defeated." I said, "It's the only thing that can. It has to be defeated. It's not like something where, like the thing is, I'm going to do a post soon of all the trans people who disagree with this ideology, and there's dozens of them, dozens, you know." And people have to realize this. They have to realize that it's not trans people who are pushing this. There are definitely a few transsexuals who have kind of gone over to the side of abusing women and demanding things from women. But I would say the vast majority of the toxicity of this comes from, transgender people, which basically means straight men,
Yeah.
straight cross-dressing men. That's who they are. And they must be defeated. They have to be defeated because they are a toxic, horrific assault on women's rights, the likes of which we have never seen, really, because we've seen women demanding their rights and getting some 100 years ago. We've never seen a pushback like this. And so I think that, it's not a question of finding compromise. It's a question of winning back ground that's been lost.
Yes.
Too much ground has been lost.
I think so. And there's no reasonable demands. The demands are not reasonable.
Yeah.
It's nothing is reasonable. Women need their single sex spaces, and that's it. That's simply it.
Yeah, exactly. It's getting worse as well instead of better. I think so. As they get more desperate and as they get more kind of exposed, they're getting angrier and angrier, and they're getting more and more desperate. So we're going to see a few terrible things, I guess, in the next few months. But I don't know. I think more people are beginning to open their eyes. I've got Andrew Doyle on the 5th, I think. I've already recorded the interview, so have a look at that. I'm hoping that will wake
that'll
up.
be interesting. That will be interesting. I shall see that. Where's Artie gone? I suppose.
Am I still frozen? Can you guys hear me? Am I still frozen?
We can hear you, but you're frozen.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so strange. I don't know what's going on with my internet. It's being a jerk.
I wonder if it's something to do with me in this new place. I don't know. Is that possible? Maybe not. So listen, why don't you? I'll turn off the camera for the moment, Artie, until you come back. Will I? No, I don't have that option. All right, we could just look at this strange angle of your face for a few minutes.
Yes.
Is that better? Am I back?
Oh, he's back. Yay.
Okay. Sorry.
There was a friend of mine I was chatting to made an observation a couple of days ago, and it was in relation to, I'm just going to use, it was Laurie Penny, but this is simply an example. You see this, I see this 100 times, and it was the reasonably narcissistic announcement, like public service announcement, weekly announcement that my pronouns are they, theirs. That was the tweet. But you see this in people's bios all the time. But what's really interesting about that sentence, he pointed out, was that the only pronoun being used there is my.
My. Yeah.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Nobody ever says my pronouns are mine, because it looks so obvious, doesn't it? That because they're not changing it, they're not changing anything. It's my pronouns are mine. But your pronouns for me are they, theirs. So it's compelling us to change, whilst they have to do nothing.
Yes.
And it's such a narcissistic thing to do.
And it's doing this in the name of transsexual. It used to be, and this is what half of the world's, most people still think we're talking about, a tiny number of distressed gender dysphoric transsexuals who we're trying to give a little bit of courtesy to and make a couple exceptions for. That's what people still think is going on. And those days are long gone. Now it's people who said, oh, look, we made some exceptions for this tiny number of distressed people. Let's just throw away all notions of biological sex. Let's just say everybody gets to tell everybody else how the hell you address us. Let's just say any man can access any woman's space whenever he wants on demand by declaring it so. And then turn around and say the actual transsexuals who don't agree with this, they're all true scum. So it's just astonishing that the actual transsexuals are the most hated people by the transgender movement a lot of the time. They're literally called scum.
Yeah.
And then these men who just declare themselves narcissistically that they have special pronouns, you know, like that guy, that politician in New York who took the women's space that had been, you know, the suffragettes had guaranteed, you know, equal representation for women. He had that removed. He's a man who literally calls transsexuals true scum. This is somebody who is not remotely transsexual. This is somebody who's transgender, which just means I don't believe that men and women are a thing anymore, and I believe I can take anything that belongs to women, essentially.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's so unhelpful, isn't it? I mean, you only have to think of it for a moment to realize that this is the most unhelpful thing that's ever happened to trans people. Yes, is this whole idea of transgender and men? So many men. I've had so many just normal, but not normal, just so many men in my mentions saying you're evil, horrible, bigoted woman, and they're not losing anything. They're not losing safe spaces, but they're also not losing anything in terms of acceptance. But they are making it difficult for people to accept trans people because they're being so unbelievably appalling that it makes somebody like me say, you know, no compromise, none.
Yeah, exactly.
Just,
you know, one of the reasons,
defeat.
Yeah, one of the reasons I'm doing this post that lists the you know, trans people who agree with us is simply you know, there's just to make that point, but also I want to remind people who subscribe to my blog and who may be following along in this conversation that we can't throw out the trans baby with the water in the sense that there's lots and lots of trans people who have been fighting this, who've been banned from Twitter for fighting this. There's even people who would come under what we would call the transgender umbrella. You know, I don't think Fiona Lander has had anything done, so to speak, for instance. But she's a wonderful person, absolutely full of empathy for women. As I think Debbie Hayton often says, they identify with women. They don't identify as women. And so it's a crucial distinction. And I think that we got to be careful because when people, you know, when Pandora's box is opened and people finally realize what's going on, when they see, you know, some of the stuff I've posted on my site, that the horrific fetishism that goes on, fetishizing of abortions is the most recent one I posted about. You know, when people see that, there is going to be a huge what's the word?
Backlash.
Backlash. I nearly said lashback. A huge backlash. And of course, because all these organizations like Stonewall have so tightly tied gay people to this, you may even see a backlash against gay people. You know, it's really frightening, and it's got to be. And so, you know, it's so great to see these voices of gay men starting to come out. Of course, lesbians have been shouting about it for years.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Lesbians have been here since before everyone else.
Well, they were the first attack. In fact,
yes.
Can I tell you something, Helen, before you go on? Just one quick thing. I'm actually living near Janie Godley at the moment, would you believe? Janie Godley is a real trans rights lunatic, and she got an award at some LGBT award ceremony the other day. For the whole evening, they didn't mention lesbians once. Do you know what I mean? They didn't mention lesbians once, and I actually believe that we have come to a place where they think lesbians, the whole reality of lesbians, is in itself problematic. You know. So I think that's a really frightening thing. Sorry, Helen.
I think they're telling lesbians that, you know, look at Elliot Page. You know, this is somebody who was an outspoken lesbian and is now saying, oh, I'm not a lesbian, you know?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I'm not even a woman. No. But then they're like, well, I'm not a man either. I'm a non-binary in between. It's like, this is not gay pride. This is gay shame. It's really tragic, you know?
True. Very
true.
It is the closet made of their own bodies. That's what.
But honestly, you know, but the backlash, you know, that Manchester Pride thing where a gay man was hounded out of Pride for wearing an LGB Alliance T-shirt.
Yeah,
that is really quite shocking.
Someone made a good point. Someone said that if lesbian, gay, and bisexual people all did a pride march now, right, they would be shouted at and abused the way the original pride marchers were, but by LGBT plus people. They would be the ones lining the streets and shouting abuse at them. It's just an extraordinary time to be alive. It really is.
It is, because I accused, somebody was saying that this was absolutely fine, and I said, well, you're excluding in the name of exclusion, and he said, yes, that's right, and I thought, yeah, you're proud of it. This epitomizes the movement, doesn't it? I said on Twitter the other day, is there anything more fucking smug and self-serving than people invoking the what was it? The Karl Popper cartoon of intolerance of intolerance, and you're like, oh, God, it's so self-serving, isn't it? Like, I'm right. Mm-hmm. I have correct intolerance. It's so, again, and it all leads back to a certain narcissism, doesn't it? That I'm right, like I am right, and therefore it doesn't matter. My methods don't matter, because the result is the thing.
This is the problem with the whole left right now. The left just isn't doing the checks and balances. They're not getting the checks and balances from the right anymore. They've won, so to speak, the hearts and minds of of the media and of the cultural elite, and now they're just like, we could just go further and further and have crazier and crazier beliefs, and we never have to. They can still look out at the right wing cultural sphere and see homophobia and see things that are bad and say, see, it's not humanly possible for our side to have gone too far one way, because we can still see that there are people who are bad on the other side, and it's just a horrible time to be gay. It's a really terrible time. It's really great for such a long time, but now all this allegiance has fallen apart. These pride movements were just flooded with money. These pride organizations and parades flooded with corporate money, flooded with a complete lack of any oversight, any checks and balances, more and more outrageously exaggerated behavior, more and more outrageously exaggerated politics infiltrating these things. You can't even have a pride parade anymore without just endless protests, shutting it down with more and more preposterous demands. It's just vicious, just virtue signaling, narcissistic nonsense all the way down. It's a horrible time to be gay, and everybody's within the gay communities ripping each other apart. They're all attacking each other.
It all, again, this brings me back to the BBC. As all we're looking for is a proper conversation. The men in women's prisons is a problem. Men in women's safe spaces is a problem. With young girls being told that they will be happy if they cut off their breasts and risk infertility with dangerous puberty blocking drugs and cross hormone drugs, it's a problem. And the BBC pretending that none of this is an issue and not even mentioning it on women's hour and things like that, and not even bringing it up, ignoring Marion's case. I just can't be. It can't go on. We do need a mass protest. Something big, and I do think that the debate idea is the way to go. Sorry, I know I keep saying it, but it's stuck.
Well, you're right. Yeah, I mean, because it's true. I mean, wasn't there going to be a Kathleen Stock Peter Tatchell debate, but he's pulled out.
Of course.
Kathleen said very unhelpfully that it was both sides who made him pull out. I'm sorry, but that's not true. The apology he wrote was to his side. It wasn't to gender critical women. He just did the usual, I'm so sorry for even thinking about speaking to these people. So the both sides thing that Kathleen said was extremely unhelpful, I thought, because it's a major cliche that both sides are at fault in this debate. It's not true. It doesn't hold up, and to join in with that is just not helpful, But anyway. So I know you can't say anything because you don't want to join in my personal beef with Kathleen. So did anything else happen this week while I was away?
Well, there was, and I spoke about this on Saturday, but I still find it quite amusing because I haven't seen if there's been a follow up. I still quite like the idea that transactivists are going to crowdfund for Sean Facebook and send it to him.
Oh, we did that.
That would be awesome.
It's very funny. It's very funny. I mean, you know, and the book, I mean, I love the fact that the book calls for the abolition of prisons as well. That'd be great, won't it? It'll be like the Purge all the time. You know?
So I'm hoping that happens, because that would be awesome. There
was one other thing. That woman, that straight woman who magically turns bi when she's talked about by the other side, who from the Lib Dems, who was one of the people who got that gay bloke chucked out of the thing. I noticed she said something like, "TERFs coming at me, you know, fuck off. You're murderers," she said. Did you see that tweet?
Oh, I did see that. That was really astonishing. But again, it goes back to what we were saying, that a huge part of the problem here is that there doesn't seem to be any consequences for lying anymore. I see it all the time. People will blatantly lie. There was let me, because we've got some time, let me just go back to the fight I was having. I blocked, because I'm now prepared to block people for personal abuse. And honestly, people, they get as angry with me for blocking people as they do for my asking the question. It's like they want to be able to have a go, and they're really angry that they get blocked. So then there's this huge sort of behind my back sort of tirade. Now I can't remember what I was going to say. Where was I with it? No, where was I with it?
Well, I'll try and prompt it.
Okay.
But just be a little bit careful, Helen. You know, I mean, it can't be nice being subjected to that. You know, I think the reason they're so angry at you is because, you know, your question is so powerful, and they know it is. They hate you for that. So every so often,
they do.
Every so often, what I suggest doing is just turning off replies from people who don't follow you. Because if you don't see that stuff for a few days and just enjoy Twitter the way it's meant to be enjoyed.
Oh, no, that's absolutely. I'm perfectly happy to do that. It's just that it was a bank holiday weekend and my daughter's been tested positive with COVID. So you know, we're a bit stuck in. Yes, I mean she's absolutely fine, but I mean she's double vaxxed, but she's positive, so it seems like quite a virulent strain. So I'm. The devil has made work for idle hands this weekend.
Well, what better way of enjoying a bank holiday weekend than by being told you're a monster for asking for women's spaces?
Yes. It's very true. Very true. Absolutely.
Oh, Tish says her son was tested positive as well this afternoon. I'm so sorry to hear that, Tish. That's not good news. I guess it's still well, you know, this is why we got jabbed, I guess, you know.
Well, yes, I think so. I mean, she's okay. She's not affected by it, but she still got it. And so, you know, so we're still stuck in the house. So is basically it. But she's absolutely fine. She's just bored.
Are you there for 2 weeks now or something like that?
Well, we're going to have Zoom drinks later. She's stuck in her back bedroom, and I'll be in here.
Oh,
that's adorable. I love it.
Oh, well, there was something else I was going to bring up as well. Did you see the thing I posted today about straight men being told that to defeat bigotry, they're going to have to go out with trans women?
I missed that so far. I haven't.
Wow. It's very funny because you may not know this guy, Artie, but the person who illustrated the article, he looks like the popular comedian Lee Mack, the popular right-wing comedian Lee Mack. Well, actually, I don't know if he's popular anymore since he turned right-wing, but he looks like Lee Mack in a wig. So the idea that to prove your woke credentials, you're going to have sex with Lee Mack in a wig, I think it's even for them, it's an overstep too far, you know. And
there's putting so much pressure on lesbians to do pretty much that. I'm seeing exactly that scenario play out. It's ridiculous, you know.
How do you mean?
Like lesbians being told they have to go out with obvious.
Oh yeah. Well, as you know, it's been happening.
Doing it.
And gay women, but this is now they're coming for straight men, and that's when they're going to have. That's going to be a hard sell. That's going to be a hard sell, you know?
I think it's going to be a hard sell, even among all these men who are going on and on about how, you know, trans women are women.
Yeah.
And then you turn around and say, okay, well, time to start, you know, getting into, into different kinds of sex play that you weren't expecting to get into.
It has become that. It's that popular meme, though, isn't it? Don't you remember robbing trans women or women except for relationship purposes?
Oh, Robin,
remember that one?
Yeah, he was great. Sorry, I just need to get the plug for this. You can see this.
Oh my God!
Beautiful.
Be careful! You're in the Black Lodge.
It's great. This place. It's got. Oh no, where is it? I thought. Oh, it's over here.
It's beautiful. It actually looks like the Great White North, also from Twin Peaks, the hotel.
But the other
basically in Twin Peaks.
The other thing about that thing is that it's conversion therapy. Telling straight men that they're going to have sex with men is conversion therapy. It's so strange that these people don't.
But I think the men are jarred because they've never been told that before. They're like, "What? I have to what?" The gay rights movement never did that. We never said men have sex with us. Men, you know, I always was saying 98% of men don't want to have sex with me, and it's really depressing because I want to have sex with most men. You know, I think they're all gorgeous. You know, I find almost all men very, very beautiful. I'm just very, very passionate.
Thank you very much, Charlie. Thank you very much.
I'm kidding. And it's, you know, most men don't want to sleep with me back. It's depressing as hell. We never demanded sex from straight men, you know. But we've, on the other hand, faced pressure all of our lives to be straight and to try to be straight and to try to learn to like it and just get along with everyone else and not be so, you know, insistent that our sexuality matters so much. And now, you know, so like when we're being told to try to have sex with, like, you know, when gay men are being told to have sex with trans men, I find there's a massive pushback from me because it's like this instinctual, how dare you? I've fought my whole life against this kind of stuff, you know? But when straight men are being told it, they just look at this like it's a novelty and it's hilarious and we've never heard of such a thing, you know?
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
There's a bit of straight privilege there, isn't there? Because we have never been told that our sexuality, even historically, we haven't been told that our sexuality there was something wrong with it. So, you know, most straight men will just go, "Are you having a laugh?" and just enjoy it as a kind of, you know, ridiculous suggestion. But gay men are being subjected to it at the moment. I mean, if you do a search for cis fags, CISFAGS, either as two words or one word, you'll see a lot of that kind of pressure and a lot of that hatred playing out, you know?
And it's so sad because it's really driven by what lesbians have gone through 1,000,000 times more intensely their whole lives and are now being pushed into getting into relationships with men. This is all being driven by these men who, for sexual purposes, want to be seen sexually as women in terms of sexually attractive like a woman. You know, they can identify sexually as a woman and then they can imagine themselves as women in a sexual context, you know? And then they're driving all these women into this movement. They're driving lesbians into identifying as non-binary. And that's all the engine behind all of this ideology is male heterosexual sex drive. Yes.
And again, I'm gonna say again, it was really brought home to me the language that was being used. It's the humiliation of women. It's the language of porn. There's a huge amount of that going on. When you think of it that way, when you read the tweets and you think about it, it's so apparent to me that it's about power, domination, and humiliation of women. And honestly, I mean, this is a generation as well that's grown up with porn. You know, they think of women this way. They have been groomed to think of women this way, and this is how it's manifesting itself. Yes. It's really frightening, and this is why I've now decided that this just needs a complete and utter defeat. There's no compromise.
Yeah. I saw an interesting piece. I think you mentioned it already. Maybe you can give a bit more background to it. But it was about how nightingales disguised themselves as men to avoid being attacked by male nightingales. Was it nightingales?
It's a type of hummingbird or nightingale. I forget. It's a hummingbird or a nightingale. There's a certain species they discovered. Yeah, they've grown plumage to look like fanciful male plumage so that they'll just be left the hell alone.
Yes.
By very sexually aggressive males, you know? And it works. And it's just like, this is a lot like what I think trans-identified females are doing, trans men and non-binaries. There's so much sexualization of the word lesbian. There's so much sexualization of breasts. There's so much sexualization of these things. The first thing women want is to get rid of their breasts, to get rid of the label woman. and to get rid of the label lesbian, you know, and they're doing this because of those have been so sexualized and by males. And these words are associated with sex signaling to men. And if you don't want to have sex with men, if you're lesbian, or if you're bisexual and prefer not to be sexualized by men, or if you're heterosexual and just there's too much sexualization from men, you're uncomfortable with it, you're going to want to get rid of this sex signaling language, the word woman or the word lesbian, and the sex signal, your breasts. You know, the first thing that goes is your breasts. And that's because they're sort of, you know, the thing that men look at all the time.
Well, it's the thing that men look at when you're like you're 12 and you get them, and then you realize what's going on, and it's frightening. And it's really horrible. It's this dawning realization that this is fucking horrible, and that these are there now. They're now there, and this is it for the rest of your life. This is now what happens to you.
Yeah. Someone else pointed out that the that non-binary that kind of movement, or gender fluid or whatever, it might actually be a self-defense against these sexually aggressive men, in the sense that because they could say they're not women and they're not men either, that they're not interested in whoever wants to have sex with them, whether it be Lee Mack in a wig or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's also, so you might see in people who adopt that term almost a subtle criticism of what's going on as well. Like young women might be clinging on to that term as a way out of the whole mess, you know?
Absolutely. That's there's something, you know, it's easy to look at the term non-binary and the label non-binary as just one of the very silliest of all of the things in the transgender movement. But there's something sad about it and insidious about it, in that there's all these girls who are desperate to escape womanhood. And they think by identifying as trans men, they get out, but then they realize, oh shit, I've just gotten right into the thing I'm trying to get away from. You know, now I'm supposed to hang out with men and use the men's locker room. This is exactly what I was trying to get the hell away from. So then they're like, no, I'm actually non-binary. You know, wait a minute, I'm not a man either, but I'm not a woman, you know?
Yeah, well, let me tell you something that happened that I thought was quite disturbing recently. I saw a report, and you know the way when you see a headline now in the news, you can't really trust it, that says something like woman arrested for pedophilia, or women arrested for rape, or whatever. You can't trust any of that. But I saw something, and it really kind of, I wish I'd kept it, because it didn't register as crucial at the time. But it was just a headline that really made me worry, and it just said, man raped by two men. Man raped by two men in something something. And I wondered, is that a man who was raped, or was that a young woman who identified as a man who was raped? You know?
No, that's terrible, because that has an impact on gay men who, you know, there's so much sexual assault. You have no idea in gay.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes.
Oh, God. Well, maybe I'm wrong then, because I didn't.
But I mean, who knows? Now it's undermined because these words are meaningless now. So who knows? Yeah.
So you don't actually know the truth of the issue. You don't know what like, did you see a bunch of scientists in America are calling for the collection of, non-sex specific data? So
yes, it was Scientific American that said that, and they just kept slipping and sliding between these gender identity labels and sex. Like, my gender identity is this. I'm not female. One of these things is not the other thing. You'd think a science magazine would be able to get this right.
It has been. Again, like we've said so many times before, I have been shocked, really shocked at the fact that how there's truth. Truth has no meaning. It's just gone.
It's extraordinary.
It has gone. So I was going to mention the fact that there was the new Stonewall trustee.
Yes.
Who looks actually quite reasonable.
Yes. But he's been backtracking.
And his account is now gone. His account was there earlier on Twitter, and now it's gone. He had said some reasonable things back in sort of 2019, very, very reasonable things about, yes, but you can understand why women do have a problem with this because of, historically they have been oppressed and they've only just won their rights. So you can understand, can't you, how, this is a problem, and a few things like that. And then he backtracked earlier on today saying, I don't agree with J.K. Rowling, or the LGB Alliance. Now his account is gone.
Yeah. He said
incredible.
He accused the LGB Alliance of hatred, of course, and it's like, you'll always notice they never accuse Kate or Bev of being hateful because that will get them sued. But they can call the LGB Alliance hateful because
Actually,
that
that's a really good point.
And they never acknowledge that Kate worked with Stonewall just up till a few years ago. Like these people who are calling her, like they talk about the LGB Alliance as like this organization full of crazy lunatics who just have no place in the, and it's like these people sat next to you just up until a couple years ago. You worked directly with these people. These people founded Stonewall. These people founded the Gay Liberation Front. These people founded. Some of these people were at Stonewall. Some of these people founded Pride. These people were fundraising for your fucking charity just a couple years ago. Yeah. And then they decided they got sick of your bullshit. And you guys talked about this over lunch. And now you talk about them as if they're aliens from outer space. Yes. The lying hypocrisy.
And we talked to them here. And they were the smartest, most interesting, compassionate women. Weren't they? Really, really, I felt that they were a safe pair of hands. You know, I was in awe of them. And there's just absolutely this idea. And as you say, I think it's because if you say the LGB Alliance as a group, you don't actually have to consider who it is that you're talking about. Like really, really reasonable, smart, compassionate women.
Yeah, yeah. It's just, I mean, you know, and of course the BBC have never spoken to them. The BBC have never. So another reason why we need to defund the BBC. That's the third time I've mentioned it, so I am going to keep going on this. Listen, I'm going to have to go because I'm meeting a wonderful person, the person who used to do the makeup on Father Ted, and she's got a big box full of Ted photos that I'm going to look through from 25 years ago. So
well, that's fab. I mean, well, to be fair, we did broadcast for 10 minutes.
I'm so sorry. We just had a conversation amongst ourselves for 5 minutes. It's hilarious. Listen, guys, it's always lovely to see you. I'm sorry if it was echoey in here, in the red room and the lodge.
I know, but I've quite enjoyed seeing all the rooms. It's fun, the bedroom now.
Living in a new place, it's cool. I will see you when I'm back back home, and maybe on the weekend. And thank you to all.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you to our commenters. Like and subscribe.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thanks everyone for coming and joining. Love you all.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.